So while we would love to use Route 38 because it's a fantastic beautification initiative and public art initiative for our community, the amount of application and hoops to jump through in order to bring it to our community almost seemed to make it impractical. We do have, through our DPW, 5 fantastically located boxes in the community. And we realized, well, let's just start there and see how it goes.
Sure.
If it becomes such a wonderful success that we have so many applicants, we can then look into the more rigorous state process and determine if it's still something we want to pursue.
And I just like to add that this is this already exists. It's extant in many, many communities across Massachusetts and actually globally. But the type of issues that the state has just initiated, like we sort of missed the boat, as it were. For example, from Somerville, which has they're all over, and there's lots of stop signs and lots of stoplights in some of these towns, many more than even we have. Obviously, much bigger communities. But the state now has initiated fees to the tune of, I think, $5,000, and we're not even clear if that's per switch box or per community. So let's see how successful we are.
Start small.
And then, if there's community support, and depending on if the funding is going to be available, or fundraising initiative, we already have a grant from both a corporate sponsor and a Mass Cultural sponsor to offset the expenses for the artists, small gratuity, but we've tried to cover that part of the initiative so that there's no expense to the community, to our community, and just get our foot and toes painted a little bit, and see what kind of artistry comes out of our community. It's a way to jazz it up, the town up a little bit.
In your research, did you explore how these have been received in some of the communities that have already done them?
There's overwhelming
What
support
kind of-
in these communities. It's incredible. People are competing for key locations, and
Really?
I think, at least in Tewksbury, the thing we're fortunate about with the boxes that we do have available is that none of them is situated in front of anyone's home or a specific business, so they will enhance where they are and not compete with where they are. So they'll stand on their own, just like our statues do in the community, and I think they'll just become a little bit of an attraction.
What I found online too, just reading blog type, feedback on, because you're kind of curious how people will respond to it. Really, there wasn't a lot of negativity. Every now and then there was a blogger who didn't like a particular design or style, but even those people acknowledged sort of it was better than, a couple slides back looking at, someone writing words across a switch box. It's much improved.
And I'm pretty sure from my research also that there are reiterations of switch boxes. There's switch boxes that have been painted 8-10 years ago, and now there are new artists waiting in line to say, oh, let's spruce this one up again. Or I have an alternative idea, maybe even on the same thing, to recreate a look.
We've also spoken to Somerville and Waltham, so we're not new at this process. We've taken the best and the lessons learned from other communities that are ahead of us on this, so we're able to piece together all choice decisions. And of course, the final approval is going to come through the Selectmen anyway, so I think we have a lot of safety in place for good choices.
Awesome. It sounds like it's well thought out. Let me ask to my wife, to Mr. Gill.
Yeah, thank you. I just think it's such a clever idea. I give you a compliment your committee for doing this. Maybe I just never noticed them other places, but I think it's going to go a long way to beautify Tewksbury, which desperately needs some areas of beautification. I'll leave it at that. When you get the applicants, how is that going to be screened to where you pick which?
It'll be a juried process.
Okay.
So there will be a subcommittee of the beautification committee, Paige, as been our leader on this particular issue, and there has the community of artists. We could bring in, for example, and we have not pinned down because we don't have approval, but an art teacher from the school or the director, the chairperson of that group from the school system. So there's lots of options to have a well-juried, well-thought-out review process so that we're not bringing forth anything inappropriate or anything, we want it to be appropriate. I guess that's the best way
We
to
hope
say
we
it.
have the problem that we have too many to
Yes,
decide.
right. My guess is you're gonna have quite a few applicants.
We hope so.
That's right.
And certainly, I mean, we've talked a lot about making sure that the high school is involved and hopefully, you know, finding some young artists that would participate, because that would be a really cool thing for a young graduating senior to have their own little switch box. We just think it would be fun and nice, and once, you know, if we're able to get the approvals, you know, then we'll start the next phase of getting the applications out there, and that's kind of probably the biggest risky time, which is, do people come out and participate? But the sense that we got from the team, just from talking to folks, is that there will be interest, and that we will have people
Well,
coming out.
and that's been the experience in other communities.
Yeah.
So we're not blazing any new paths here. We are just initiating a successful program here in Tewksbury.
Sounds great.
I think by analogy, I think back to, at the Tewksbury Community Pantry. The pantry undertook a similar effort, I'm gonna say probably 7 to 10 years ago now, but through the high school art classes.
You did a
And they have
mural?
a mural that's 50 feet long that was designed and painted by, I think, about a half a dozen high school art students. So similar in concept, and you know, the opportunity was put out, and there were a number of interested parties. So hopefully, we'll see some similar results here. Mr. Wayne?
I'm kind of mindful that the state has put such a rigorous process in place to beautify our town in this way. And Jackie, can I just clarify one thing? The state may charge us either $5,000 per town or $5,000 per
We
box.
it was a bonded issue for safety but we did not follow it
Okay.
further because we said, let's
Sure.
let's
For us, that was
jump in
enough
the
to walk
pond
away
Yeah.
just
and
move on.
let's not put this forth as a large expense for our
Right.
community. Let's start, if it's successful, which we believe it will be, and there's multiple switch boxes up and down Route 38, then we can address it. And then we can address it from a business investment standpoint, or there's a lot of ways to look at that. But we didn't jump that way.
Yeah. Did you do any initial research on how many switch boxes there were on 38 from
Yeah.
rural
I think we
Wilmington?
had, the number was over 20.
Yeah.
Over
Yeah.
20, yeah, yeah.
So it would make quite an impact to drive down 38.
It would have. You know, that
Yeah.
program also extends to overpasses and large retaining walls that the state owns. I
Yeah.
understand their interest in
Sure.
regulating what might go up there,
Yeah.
and the switch boxes just happen to fall under that. But the DPW came forward happily and shared what they had to offer, and
Yeah, they were great.
we're delighted.
Thanks.
And I know you have a stipend for the 5 artists for their supplies. Has there been a thought to maybe making this a competition where the town then votes on the 5 different boxes, and there's a winner that gets an additional prize of some sort, so that we're driving people to those boxes to see them? And
It's not how it's been done in other
Yep.
communities. It's been done more as an expression of a community spirit, and because it is a large amount of effort put forth by the artist, and a commitment to finish within a certain amount of
Yeah.
time with a certain level of quality. The boxes have to be painted with a certain type of paint and finish and so forth. So we're looking at it as a partnership.
so I shouldn't see everything as a competition then?
No.
And there is a fun aspect into it. I think if we had 25 and we had 50 participants who wanted to be judged
Yeah.
and have but then you, to some extent, you lose the jury aspect of it. You open the jurying to the general public, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying we have a small group, let's take that first step.
You're willing to take the heat.
Who, me?
Yes.
My hair is so gray, it doesn't matter.
As the chairwoman, she gets all the
There you
heat.
I'm short enough.
We'll stand right behind her.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, this is great.
Thank you,
This is-
Scott.
I mean, this is what we thought about when we thought about the beautification committee, is finding those little things that are gonna make, quite a difference, and I appreciate the work you're doing on this.
Just one last question. It sounds like you answered this already, but from the perspective of our Department of Public Works, any of the requirements that you mentioned, types of paint, for example, they've weighed in
I've
and
supplied them
since
with
they're
a
responsible
list,
for these?
yes, there are actually, through the state, there are recommendations on how the box is actually to be painted, and we have templates of particular boxes, so the artists are familiar with the venting and where the hinges are. They're not allowed to paint, they have to maintain accessibility for the box.
And there's specific paint requirements. There's also a recommendation for, I don't want to say glazing, but
It's a polish, it's a finish, so that should there be any vandalism to the box, it can be removed quickly, graffiti can be removed quickly by our DPW.
so
Great. Okay. All right, so if there are no other questions, I know you were very gracious in seeking this discussion and the board's sort of authorization, I guess, to move forward. So out of respect for that request, we ought to take some action as a board. And I'll ask if there's a motion to, I guess, move forward and let the committee set its own deadlines and timeline.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to support the work beautification committee as presented in relation to the switch boxes and give them the authorization they need to conduct the program as presented.
Second?
All right, so we have a motion made by Mr. Penelitis, seconded by Mr. Wentworth, and Mr. Wilson, you certainly can vote from there if you
Okay.
want. So all those in favor of the motion as made, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the chair votes aye as well, so
And
you
so-
have unanimous support.
At our next meeting, we'll get all the dates together and that type of information. I'll provide that as an update at the next meeting. And then we'll hopefully be back in
Wait
front
for
of
the
you.
snow to
Present-
melt.
And
Yes, presenting you some beautiful options.
I would invite our selectmen as a group to select a switch box and get your paintbrush out.
I don't know about any of
The
this.
graffiti looks better than what you get if I paint it.
So I did have one other item that
Yes.
we wanted to bring in front of you tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And it is with regards to the Adopt an Island program. And with the Adopt an Island program, there are 28 islands that are adoptable, give or take one or two.
Well, those are all of the war memorial areas in town, some of which are not on a traffic island per se, but there are at least 28 sites within town, and probably more that a few people might wish to consider beautifying, meaning gardening,
So,
in a specific location.
yeah, so with the Adopt an Island program, it's an opportunity for companies, civic groups, institutions, individuals, really, to adopt an island or public space and make it create an attractive, welcoming oasis through our town. Once adopted, the sponsors would agree to create a simple landscape plan, monitor that space, maintain it throughout the season. Plantings need not be elaborate, but should create an appealing natural element. The maintenance will range from basic mowing, watering, weeding, and litter control to more extensive efforts such as planting of flowers. I do want to mention, thank the town manager and the DPW for their support and help with this, because there's been a lot of questions and just trying to figure out what made sense. The town of Tewksbury maintains a list of the sites that are available for adoption. The spaces would be assigned on a first-come, first-served basis. If you had one this year, you would obviously have the first right to re-adopt that same space the following year. The agreements are for 3 years. And the adopters basically will, I'll try and go through it quickly without reading every bullet, but identify an island that they want to maintain, purchase the plants and install what they want to do to maintain that island, utilize natural materials. They would water and remove litter, replace plants as needed throughout the year, and they would maintain that space. Where they might interfere with traffic safety, plants can't exceed 24 inches in height. In return, the town will provide a sign recognizing the adopter's efforts. And the adopters would also have the option of picking up loam or mulch at the Public Works Department, which have been discussed and worked out with the DPW. So the second page is just the application. And I don't think there's anything really unique there, so I won't spend a ton of time on that. And the third page breaks down the agreement and sort of the agreement between the adopter and the town. There's mulch pickup protocol laid out there at the bottom of page 3. And then if you turn to page 4, I think this is something that had certainly had a lot of discussion the last time we had talked about this, but we identified sort of 4, those were the
Color
strongest,
options, sign.
4 color options. Those were the strongest consensus options that we came up with. We really spent a lot of time talking about just what's an appropriate sign, what would it look like. We don't want it to look tacky. We want it to, survive the weather and the elements, but we also, you want it to be affordable also. So sort of laying out that's sort of what the committee came up with in terms of color options.
We have not decided. We would yes, thank you. Welcome any suggestions. I'm not a very good color person because I'm marginally colorblind, so
Just like with Switchbox, we've really taken our cue from other communities,
Yes.
Both with the guidelines and the application and with the sign design, trying to pick what we felt would be the most tasteful representation.
and sign design. So the signs used throughout different communities are just enormously varied. Everywhere from those little lawn signs, the little for sale signs that are just aluminum with plastic, which are actually used quite widely, but don't last very long and cost about $20, or $25 now, to hand-carved $300 signs, or signs that are already are paid for in very rare communities by the island adopter. I would refer to them as the islanders. But these particular signs are commercially available, readily available. They're very hard aluminum, thick aluminum. They mount easily, and we can customize them to say this landscape is cared for by, and we already have a growing list of people who are interested. So once I think we promote this, we hope to, not break the bank by providing something.
And it will be the name
Consistent.
of the adopter. We're not having telephone numbers and websites. And
No,
all
it's
these
not gonna
other-
be
It's
a-
not mini advert.
Right,
It's a goodwill
right.
expression.
Sure,
Partnership
sure.
with the community.
And the only other thing I wanted to add is it's just a May, third week in May through October. Obviously, in the winter months, it would be hard to maintain something, so.
And
Yeah.
It's it's to spruce things up springtime through the fall, and then it would come down, and then they'd
yeah.
re.
And we would have to remove the signs because, look what happens. They
Sure.
would, we're
Sure.
trying to find things that are sturdy enough, but would be removed prior to plowing and not be destroyed, so.
Have you considered the coexistence of the signage you're referring to with the veterans memorials that
We
are already
have, actually. In fact, in one earlier iteration, we looked at for example, considered a taller post with two small signs, one honoring a new post, honoring the veteran, and then one stating that this area is maintained by X. I think the signage and how we manage it, again, we're gonna get started. We can, and we're trying to keep the cost reasonably low, that we can address those issues or improve those issues. But these signs are easily mountable, moved to a bigger post should we need to.
And also they can be set in a place that they don't disturb what's there or
Yeah.
take away
And-
from
Yeah.
the memorial.
And we
And
are,
that's in part why I
and we
asked
are
the
right
question.
now living with all these locations. Those signs are there, the brick structures are there, and without further discussion, and I know there's some option for war memorials on Newtown Common, so there's a lot of things that have yet to happen that might all mitigate some of this.
Sure.
But, again,
Mhm.
spring is gonna come, we're gonna smell soil again, instead of
Yeah, you
instead of
should.
the snow that we don't smell
We
right now.
hope.
Hopefully.
We hope.
That it is going to
Yeah.
come, and,
Yeah.
so we need to get started. The other benefit, and there are some tiny signs here, these types of, this particular style of sign, we could also place in highly littered places, the same style we could make consistent across the community. So in our parks, where there's a lot of litter, or on our fields where there's a lot of litter, a comparable no littering sign could go up. We looked at 1 million sign vendors, so.
So one other question for
Yes.
me, and then I'll see what my colleagues have to offer. Is it possible in the structure that you've created for example, a local business who may not want to actually do the labor to provide the funding, and a resident or a neighbor to the island actually be the person?
A landscaping company
Yeah.
to maintain it.
So you
Yes,
can
that,
have a partnership
Yes,
application.
absolutely.
Or a joint venture.
and that is actually noted
Okay.
in our application.
I mean,
You can have-
that's a great situation where you have, a business that wants to get involved. They don't want to do the work and maintain it themselves. I mean, that's a fantastic marriage. So hopefully we'll be able to find some of those that will